loving guest.
Steve Jeltz, episode 3, sir. What's up?
Man, episode 3. I never thought we'd make it this far.
I know. First two were tough.
Yeah.
Something happened yesterday. I can't quite put my finger on it. Cincinnati lost. I know that.
Yeah, Cincinnati lost. Kansas City won.
There was another game though, wasn't there?
Oh yeah, yeah, there was. Well, I wouldn't really much call it a game.
No, that was a beating.
Jesus, it was a war of attrition, is what it was. And we're already seeing in the media and in on Bleacher Report and all that stuff, people talking about how, oh, the Eagles didn't win the game, the Niners lost it because the refs and injuries and this and that. I was like, no, man, that's kind of how the games are played. If you remember a few years back, the last year that Carson Wentz was any good, when we got into the wild card game against Seattle, and Carson Wentz gets hurt, gets a concussion because Jadeveon Clowney actually legitimately hits him with a dirty hit.
Mm-hmm.
He's out of the game. Josh McCown comes in. Josh McCown tears his groin off the bone and stays in the game because we don't have another quarterback. And we lose the game basically because we didn't have a quarterback. Well, we injure Brock Purdy on a legitimate, football play, on something that happens across the league every week. Freak thing that he gets hit the wrong way and injures his ulnar collateral ligament. Then you have the issue where Josh Jacobs gets a concussion from a normal hit.
Oh, Josh Johnson.
Josh Johnson.
Yeah.
Gets the concussion from a normal legal hit, and due to the NFL changing up the emergency quarterback rules, they don't have anybody else. So Brock Purdy has to come back in and basically can't throw the ball. Now, you can say whatever you want about the penalties. You can say whatever you want about the Devontae Smith catch that wasn't a catch. Bottom line is, look, it happens in every game. Yes, I'd be pissed if the Eagles would have lost on the Devontae Smith catch that wasn't a catch. But that said, there was a lot more that went into that game than just that play.
Right.
Just, the quarter, there was a lot more that went into it. The Eagles won the game. You play who you play. Every single time the Eagles are brought up and have been brought up this year as far as how they've done and what they've done, everybody's got some fucking excuse as to why they're not legitimate, as to why they don't belong here, as to why they have it. They're not as good as they are, quote unquote, supposed to be. You know what? It's bullshit. The Eagles are where they're at. They've earned their spot. There's nothing else. It's just loser mentality at this point, trying to say, oh, who have they played?
Right. The strength of schedule, and who have they beaten?
Right. You know what? They've beaten everybody but that's been put in front of them, with the exception of 3 teams. And 2 of those were with their backup quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody says, we don't say, oh, well, that was with our backup quarterback. We say we lost 3 games.
Yeah. And quite frankly, losing that first one of the season to Washington, correct? Yeah. I think that was needed. I think it was a needed loss because you get to a point where you have that streak going through. You're not the 72 Dolphins. I'm sorry, and it's just one of those things where that's going to ride over you, much like the Patriots team that lost in the Super Bowl, seeking perfection against the Giants. Had we been undefeated all this whole time, I would probably be much more worried about the Super Bowl than I am now. Now I'm just wanting to have fun with it. Had we been undefeated all this time, that would all be in my head, thinking this is going to be a repeat of Patriots Giants. What I can say about the haters, whatever, is look, I was nervous about the Giants game in the playoffs. It really was. The Giants they're not a bad team. I think that got a good, some pretty good players on that team, and it's look, I'm not a big fan of Daniel Jones, but man, he had a heck of a season. And Saquon stayed healthy, and look, the Eagles rolled him over in the playoffs. If you look at the San Francisco game yesterday, the thing that sticks out to me is, and I say the same thing. Look, the Devontae Smith catch, not a catch on a 4th and 3, and whatever the heck it was, a 4th and 3, right?
Yeah, 4th and 3,
and however many yards it went. Look, I would be a little more concerned, or at least in agreement with, we only won by a field goal, we only won by a touchdown. That was not the case at all.
right?
On the flip side of that, the last quarter of that game was so hard to watch because, I've never actually really recall watching any game where you're down by that much and you're doing nothing but running the ball. And your quote unquote emergency quarterback in Christian McCaffrey and his pass attempt was one of the worst things I've ever seen attempted in an NFL game. It was like 30 yards away from anyone else on the field. So yeah, it almost made me feel bad because it's like they have nobody. Purdy was like, what did he throw? Like 3 passes for like 5 yards after he got hurt?
After he got hurt, I want to say, I can't remember,
like
but
5 yards
like,
each.
Yeah, like he couldn't throw after he got injured. That was
No.
The bottom line was, I think his line ended up being like 4. He was like 4 for 4 with like 42 yards or something like that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I'll see if I can bring it up, but no, you're right. And the thing is, with one more thing about the Devontae Smith catch. So you want to talk? We can talk about that. And you know what? Here's the fact of the matter with that one. It took the TV, the analysts, how long to even figure out that, oh, there's a fucking view that shows that he might not have caught the ball.
They were either
So
at the end of the first quarter or into the second quarter, right? When they even
right.
showed that.
No, I mean it was closer. I think it was closer to the closer to the play than that, but it was well after the replays and everything, and or not after the replays, but after they scored a touchdown, and it was on like the next drive or the drive after that. So it
Mhm.
was, there's no, and Kyle Shanahan even said that he didn't get an angle, like the people, he didn't see an angle of it when his people were looking at it that showed that he didn't catch the ball. So, all right, but let's say that they do challenge that and they get it overturned. Okay, so maybe that changes a couple things here and there, but at the end of the day, if Purdy still gets hurt, if Johnson still gets hurt, it's immaterial. The Eagles are still going to wear down that defense,
Yep.
and it's still, and even if they didn't, the way that the Eagles played the game, and obviously it may change some things. It may change some variables, and things may turn out a little bit different. But I don't think the outcome is going to be that much different, because if you look at what happened and you take everything in under consideration, yeah, it was tight going into the second half. But the Eagles' offense was on the field for so long on their drives. They were wearing down that defense. And by the end of the game, or by the second half and everything, they were tired. They were making mistakes, which was leading to penalties because they were getting sloppy. Those penalties and that stuff softened them up, made it easier for the Eagles to score, extended drives. The Eagles were going to win the game. Just that's how it was going to play out.
Yeah.
On what I saw, which, when your defense gets tired and gets sloppy and commits penalties, it's not a formula for winning. especially when you can only run the ball.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like I said, look, that game was separated by 31-7. You know, you're separated by multiple end zone needs, and San Francisco just couldn't get there. You know, that there was no pass threat whatsoever, particularly after Josh Johnson gets bumped out of the game. Not really that there was much when he was in the game, but you know, that's neither here nor there. The guy's been around for 15 years. He can throw a football,
Right.
just with 13 different teams apparently. But you know, again, neither here nor there.
Here you go. Here's your Purdy was 4 for 4 for 23 yards.
Yeah, it's funny. That's why I said I said 3 for 3, but I thought maybe that was after about 5 yards or 5 yards a pass. So it makes sense. That's amazing. It's crazy. Which is indicative of an injured player in a game. No one goes 4 for 4. You know, that's a drive,
Right.
not a game. No, man, I'm excited. This team is hot. You know, they're getting healthier. You know, they took, you know, there's a couple bumps yesterday. But I think by these 2 weeks, I think Hurts is going to be a little more mobile. It's my, you know, that's my take anyway. I don't know if it will be or not. I just love the defense right now is just on fire, and that's what I'm really loving. Loving the play from Bradbury. I'm loving the play from Blankenship. Obviously I'm trying to go for not the big guys, you know, we all know how Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham and those guys are going to show up. But I'm just, you know, everyone's contributing. You know, Jake Elliott's even contributing to a point where I'm not nervous at all. You know, it's not like watching Ding Dong from Dallas.
Right.
You know, it's you know, team sport, right? So this has been fun. And look, the other thing too, it's been great is watching the run game. Look, Boston's scalped another touchdown yesterday. Kenneth Gainwell again, some nice performance. Not quite the performance he had against the Giants when he ran up over 100, but man, you know, it's like a 3-headed monster right there without Hurts running.
Dude, and that's the thing. So, I mean, here's the deal. We've got to hope for in the lead up to the Super Bowl is that number one, Jalen's shoulder starts feeling better. Number two, that they can continue to keep Lane Johnson from feeling pain. You know, that torn abductor adductor is an issue for him. It's completely torn now, so it's less painful, but it's just still a weakness. And then hopefully, I haven't seen anything about Landon Dickerson, which that could be huge.
Yes, yeah.
So
Yeah,
hopefully
he got bumped
good.
out. Andre Dillard came in toward the end of the game for him. That was in the 4th. So,
Which honestly, Andre Dillard filling in at guard is good.
yeah.
I mean, but still, you'd like your starting line to be intact. Especially the biggest threat that with the Eagles, the defensive line, you've got BG, you got Fletch, you got Javon Hargrave, you got Josh Sweat, you got Hassan Reddick coming out from the linebacker position. You know, well, as an outside rush, and you know you can't understate what Hassan Reddick has meant for this defense.
Mm-hmm.
The Chiefs, on the other hand, have a gentleman by the name of Chris Jones.
Yep.
They're a defensive tackle, and he can absolutely wreck an offensive game plan. So we really need our offensive line to be strong, to be ready, ready to go. Hopefully, Jalen Hurts' shoulder is feeling better. You know, it's going to be a tough game. I think that our offense outmatches their defense. They do have that, not to say that they don't have talented people. They've got George Karlaftis, a first round pick, a defensive end. They do have some good players up there. So it's not going to be a cakewalk. Obviously, they're 14-3, just like we were, and they got to that position. You know, there's a reason. So
yeah, they've got an insane Look, their defense is middling. Chris Jones is ridiculous. I think I looked it up at 15.5 sacks earlier in the season, just a half sack away from Hassan Reddick, who led the team with 16 on the Eagles. Chris Jones is ridiculous, and he's someone to watch for. Obviously, they do have other weapons out there, but they're very middling. I think I don't know what their overall rank was, but that's their weakness, pretty much overall. The Eagles, I think, on paper, are much better, and on the field, honestly. Whereas Kansas City's offense, I think, is maybe a tick better, and only because like they're always able to roll out like, these insane players that you don't hear about. Look, for as everyone gave Brock Purdy all his comeuppance, we need to give another late round draft pick in Mr. Vineland.
Dude, it fucking killed me. I'm like, Vineland? Where the fuck is Vineland? I've heard of Vineland before.
It cracked me up. But Isaiah Pacheco is a Rutgers kid. Went to Vineland High School. Man, talk about a late round pick who's just been on fire this season for them. He's not a great running back. He's a multi-threat though. He's just, on kick returning, and he's, catching short passes, and he's good. They got McCall Hardman back, but it looks like they had Kadarius Toney possibly go out. So there's could be something to that, but they still have Valdez Scantling still ridiculous, and can't forget they have the best tight end in football. Travis Kelce's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely ridiculous.
He's dealing with an injury too. He was actually a game time decision, hopefully for the sake of the game and the sake of just, you never want to play a team. When you play a team, you want to face their best. So I want them as strong as possible. Granted, with Patrick Mahomes on one leg, essentially, they're not at their strongest, but they should still be. I mean, they're strong enough that they made it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
My biggest concern, and it's a stupid concern, but this is my biggest concern.
It's falling asleep on our podcast.
Somebody pumping fucking roofie gas in my fucking house, apparently. I don't know what it is. Every time we record lately, I'm like falling asleep, and I don't know what the hell's going on. But anyway, say the Eagles win, which I'm going down on the record right now. I think the Eagles win this game. I don't think it's an easy game. I don't think it's a rollover by any means. I don't think it's gonna be like 49-0. But we're gonna beat them, and then people are gonna say, "Oh, well, Patrick Mahomes was hurt."
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's exactly what's going to happen. I know that, that. There's no way around it. It's funny. This is the one odd thing that concerns me, because Hurts is obviously not 100% either. I think he's not quite as bad off right now as Mahomes is, but at least as far as terms of actually playing, I think it's pretty evident with their performances yesterday. Even though they both won, I don't want to make that a point. That's a miss here, but let's just say that turns into a game of backups. Man, Chad Henne looked really good. 98-yard drive, and that's the part that concerns me. Is I don't know that Minshew has that in him. And I hope that doesn't come to that. But that's Chad Henne's not Josh Johnson. That's all I'm saying.
No. And that's kind of where, had Minshew won one of those two games, all right, we'll say this. If the New Orleans game didn't happen, or if they win that game, I feel 100% confident that should Jalen Hurts go out, Gardner Minshew's going to step in. All right, cool. We're going to change the offense up a little bit, because it's not the same skill set.
Right.
But I'm going to trust Gardner Minshew is going to win this game. Now, after seeing the performance in the New Orleans game and us not winning it, my faith in Gardner Minshew to do anything other than hand the ball off at the end of the game is very low. Um, it's crazy because he played so well against Dallas. He nearly
Yeah.
beat Dallas.
Yeah, on a Christmas Eve game in Dallas.
Right. That was not an easy game to win. And he had us on the doorstep. If not for a fumble by Miles Sanders, we were looking at driving to win that game. But I just can't. I have very little faith at this point that Gardner Minshew is going to be able to do anything to deliver us. He's not Nick Foles.
Right. That's kind of the point I was making. Like, you made the comment, and I think a lot of people are, well, yeah, if they win, well, they beat a bum Patrick Mahomes, or, they beat, a backup here in San Francisco and all this. And it's like, look, we had a backup win a Super Bowl, so I don't hear it. But at the same point, right now, as we stand, I do completely agree with you. I do not trust our backup. And I think that'll be good material for a future episode after the season's over, is what they're going to do. Because I think we've now seen San Francisco's proved it with the freak stuff with Trey and Jimmy G. And to me, San Francisco was lucky to have Trey Lance and Jimmy G as a 1-2 punch. That's pretty ridiculous. Not a lot of teams have quarterbacks like that.
Right.
And then Brock Purdy came out of nowhere. So look at that 1-2-3. I don't know that you have a better 1-2-3 quarterback situation in the NFL. I think they've proved that, it's probably a good idea to have I'm not saying Minshew's not capable, but I think that's a conversation to have. It's like, where do you go from here on that? Hurts is obviously your number one, but, might not be a bad idea to find a potentially more capable number two, particularly the way Hurts plays the game. He's going to take his bumps and he's going to get hurt. I mean, that's just the way it is. Right. I hate to say that, but, I think having a good number two would be we'll see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And at this point, what I think is going to happen, and you saw this happen last year after the Chiefs and Buffalo game, with the overtime where Buffalo didn't get a chance to play or didn't get a chance to score again, and people weren't happy with the way the overtime rules were. The NFL changed the rules. So I have a feeling that what they're going to do is they're going to expand the game day roster. The game day roster is 45 players, or it used to be 45 players, and then you could have an emergency quarterback as your 46th player.
Mm-hmm.
The NFL did away with that rule, and they just said, all right, your game day roster is 46. But so now most teams won't dress 3 quarterbacks. They'll dress 2. And then they'll have the third quarterback is on the roster somewhere, but they're inactive on game day. I have a feeling that you're going to see the NFL say, all right, we're going to leave the active roster at 46, and then you're allowed an emergency quarterback, and they'll reinstitute the rules where the way it used to be is if you put your third string quarterback in, then neither of your first 2 quarterbacks could come back into, or if you put them in before the fourth quarter, neither of your first 2 quarterbacks could come back into the game unless there was an injury or something like that. It was a weird rule. It was very convoluted, but that was the deal. I have a feeling they're going to, if not for the regular season, they'll definitely enact that for the playoffs, just so you don't have another situation like this.
Right, and baseball does that. They expand out a little bit here and there at certain times, so that would make a lot of sense. And look, San Francisco's not the only team that went 3 deep. The Ravens did that. Lamar goes down, and you've got Huntley. He goes down, and then you've got Anthony Brown starting. He was even rumored to start in the Cincinnati game. So I mean, who's a guy who had no experience whatsoever. It's going to happen. Look at the Miami Dolphins. Look at that. They started Skylar Thompson in the playoff game because Tua's down, and then Teddy Bridgewater's down, and now you're at 3. I never even heard of him really until this. Just look, I follow football, but I do try my best to know the starting quarterbacks, and sometimes I happen to know the backups. I'm sorry, I don't know the third stringers for most teams.
Right.
I just
I barely know the third stringer for the Eagles. It's Ian Book.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean it's just not a name that's going to roll off everyone's tongue, and you could be the most hardcore fan. It's just one of those things. But it's gonna be fun. I can't wait. This is, man, again, feels unreal. Once again, in a matter of what, a 4-month span, we'll have been in the World Series and the Super Bowl. It's pretty awesome.
Now, hopefully, different results with the Super Bowl, but and think about it this way too. It's, if you look at it, man, the Eagles in 2016 they hired Doug Peterson, and Carson Wentz is a first-year starting quarterback. Okay. 2016. 2017, they make the playoffs. Obviously, Carson Wentz gets hurt, but they win the Super Bowl. That's Doug Peterson's second year, Carson Wentz's second year. And Carson Wentz had a quantum leap in his performance between 2016 and 2017. Okay. Then, obviously, we all know what happened. He worked his way out of town and whatever. Peterson gets fired. Nick Sirianni last year takes over as the head coach. Jalen Hurts takes over as a first-year starting quarterback. Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni make quantum leaps the second year. The second year, they're back in the Super Bowl. What is there? I think 6 players left over from that Super Bowl team.
Yeah, there's not many.
So essentially, a completely different roster, completely different head coach, completely different starting quarterback, and 5 years later, they're back. They're right back in the championship. It's unheard of. Howie Roseman won Executive of the Year. I can't think of anyone that would be more deserving of that. You look at the moves that he's made, the buttons that he's pressed, and every single one, with the exception of Robert Quinn, has hit this year.
Yeah, I mean, even you had Sue making a couple big moves at the end of yesterday's game. Not that it really mattered a whole lot, but it was still good to see him.
Right, him and Linval Joseph both.
Linval, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's these guys These guys were sitting at home.
Right.
They weren't doing anything.
Let's go. Okay. So one more move that hasn't really been quite a hit besides Robert Quinn has been Kern, the punter that we brought in for Sippos. So hopefully Aaron Sippos is healthy going to the Super Bowl, because holy shit.
Yeah, it's not exactly good.
He was a Pro Bowler last year, though. Both of them were. Robert Quinn and Brett Kern were both Pro Bowl players last year, and just completely fucking fell off. You can't predict that shit. But what I will say, and I'm gonna say it right now to everyone, I was wrong about Jonathan Gannon, as defensive coordinator. I'm glad he's not going anywhere next year. I was ready to run him out of town. I was ready to drive back to Philly and drive him out of town.
Yeah, I think you said that on our actual podcast, on the main show. Yeah,
multiple times I said it. Nope, I was wrong. And part of it was from a perceived lack of aggression on the part of the defense. But his scheme works. At the end of the day, his scheme works. So I got nothing bad to say about the man at this point. I'm glad he is staying. He announced, I'm glad he's staying. Let's keep him here. Because you know what? And I sort of think about it. When Jim Johnson, greatest coach, greatest defensive coordinator that the Eagles have ever had, when he took over, he had a defense loaded with talent his first year.
Mm-hmm.
He had Dawk, he had Trot, he had shit. I forget. It was a laundry list of great players. They weren't good. He had to work with them and mold them and get them to buy into his vision. And when he did, the rest is history, you know? So I was willing to give up on him too soon. I was wrong. He is night and day better than Jim Schwartz, who he took over for. I don't know, man. I think we are so lucky to be Philly fans at this point.
Oh, 100%. And I want to go back to two things that you and I have said on this podcast. I said one thing, you said the other thing. So back at this 21 season preview that we did on our main show, I commented that I just want to see what Jalen Hurts could do in a full season. That's all I wanted to see. That's all I'm going to say about that. For your statement you made on our 22 season preview is that you said that every single game on the schedule is winnable. So far.
I mean, and that's the thing. The amount of talent on this roster, and I think that that's kind of where Nick Sirianni got screwed for Coach of the Year, was the amount of talent that's on this roster. It was kind of expected that they would do well. But to go from what they were last year and see and I've used this term, and I don't want to use it too much, but it really is. It's such a giant jump. It's a quantum leap from where they were to where they are. They are light years ahead of where they were this time last year.
Mm-hmm.
And you credit that to the staff. Obviously, the players did a lot of the work there on themselves. They improved their games. They worked hard. They're responsible for it. But the game plan has to be in place. The coaches have to put them in the right position to succeed. The coaches have to have the game plan and call the right plays and adjust on the fly as the game is being played. That doesn't happen without a strong head coach, without good coordinators in place. The Eagles have that. And Nick Sirianni is responsible for putting together this coaching staff. Howie Roseman's responsible for putting together the roster. And Nick Sirianni is responsible for game planning and making sure that Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon are doing what they need to do on either side of the ball. The only chink in the armor for this team is special teams, punt coverage, kickoff coverage, and punting without sippos.
Right.
But dude, there's no major flaws on offense or defense. You've got some coverage issues here and there on defense, some tackling issues here and there, but there's nothing that you can point out and say this is such a glaring flaw, it's going to prevent them from winning games.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I have been so, I don't know, probably amazed is the wrong word, but just so impressed that anytime Hurts is on the field with that team, I mean, it goes back to what you said with every game being winnable because they look like a complete team with him on the field. Not talking about the Minshew games.
Right.
Outside of the Dallas game, I think that was close. Man, it's just such a solid lineup, like you said, up and down. There's so much talent there. It's just hard to overlook. The coaching staff is phenomenal. But yeah, if I completely agree. special teams is probably your biggest weakness right now. At the end of the day, though, I think your strengths on offense and defense are going to outweigh whatever weakness you have there. That's my opinion. I just don't know. Every game's different. Curious to see the health of Mahomes. Curious to see the health of some of the, make sure on both sides.
Okay.
But yeah. All right. Let's. I do want to talk about one more thing at least, and then whatever else you want to do Philly sports wise. Before the game yesterday, the Phillies made a move. They signed Josh Harrison, which kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Josh Harrison, one time, and he still's got a little pop on him. Utility infielder, longtime second baseman. He's kind of been around now. Pirates, Nationals, White Sox. I don't know where else. He played anywhere else? I don't know.
Didn't we sign him before or something, and he never played for us?
Let's look him up real quick. I'm kind of curious because I thought he's been around, and that's the crazy thing about him. Let's see. Harrison's been around since 2011. He has played for. Yeah, I remember he started in Pittsburgh, and so he went to Detroit, Nationals, and Oakland, and then the White Sox. Just for reference here, last season he played 119 games, hit 7 home runs, 256, which is a little below his career average. But the guy's a 2-time All-Star. He's like I said, got a little bit of pop. Not much, but I think he'll make a good utility infielder. I think the thing that surprised me more about that signing was I was really hoping they were going to give the Clemens kid that utility spot, even though he doesn't have much of a bat, only for the sheer fact that he can play every single position,
Right.
including exactly. So, and maybe he still makes the team. I don't know, but I can't imagine now signing Josh Harrison that Clemens makes the team. So maybe they're going to season him down at AAA a little bit more. I don't know, or maybe they just are insurance piece. I don't know what they thought about Clemens then. That's the only thing that really surprised me about the Harrison move, because now it makes Harrison the obvious backup second baseman.
Yeah.
And wherever else he can play, obviously in the infield. Looks like over his career in the field, he has well, he pitched 3 innings last year. That's something. Not to good numbers.
No.
But he has done in his career, he is second, third, short, right field, designated hitter, left field. I think that's it. So he's played all over the place, and actually he played shortstop as late as this year, or this past season. So he is a true utility player, but does have a little bit of pop. Maybe that's what they're looking at. Maybe that they can slot him in anywhere, and that's the one thing Danielle and I were talking about it yesterday. She had told me about it, and I was trying to think of what the rationale was behind it. Was that maybe he's looked at as, hey, you know what? He's going to be a bench player, but maybe he'll provide a little more pop, especially in the absence of Harper in the first half of the season.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my guess.
And that's kind of where I was thinking too. And hopefully, I'm on your side as far as Cody Clemens. I'd like to see him get a shot, but not a bad idea to have him in. One of the things that I had seen recently too that kind of plays into Phillies talk is, did you see that our old friend Cole Hamels did a showcase recently?
Yeah, and apparently looked really good. He said he was hitting low 90s on his fastball. They said he's looked as good as he's had in years. I don't know. I don't think the Phillies make a move on him, unfortunately. I really would love for that. At this point, though, I don't know that he's more than a bullpen arm for them. I really don't know where he would fit in. I really don't. I keep hearing 6-man rotation, but I think they're pretty full as far as I'm concerned.
Honestly, I kind of think about bringing him in, and even if it's just for this year, you obviously don't want to stunt the growth of a younger guy, but you've had situations where some of your younger starting pitchers haven't been able to go deep into games, and you start with an opener. And then maybe, you have Cole in, see how he pitches. If he pitches his way into the rotation, maybe you use him in an opener mid type spot, with one of your younger guys. Or maybe you use him as a sixth, uh, uh, a spot starter, long relief out of the bullpen. I think that he's got a lot to offer as far as teaching young players too.
Mhm.
And so I would love to see him back, if he's going to pitch with anybody this year. I'd love to see it be with us if
Oh yeah,
he
100%. No,
he can
I
add value.
agree. I agree on that. Like especially the sentimental part of it. I'm just thinking like in terms of rotation, even bullpen. Because obviously you've got Wheeler and Nola and Taiwan Walker, Ranger Suarez. Are all obvious locks, and then you start throwing maybe any of these new guys in there. The rookies possibly. Maybe he does make sense in a 6-man rotation at the back end of it at this point in his career if he can obviously if he can maintain. I would love in a Kyle Kendrick type role at this point where he does spot start, long relief. Um, I just don't know. It's weird. I guess it's strange to think of like the two eras of Phillies meeting like that. Nola does have experience. I think were they in the rotation together at any point
I
really
think they
early on in
were
his career.
Noah's
It was like
rookie
toward the
year.
end of Hamels, yeah, toward the end of Hamels and Philly, and Nola's like, yeah, really early on in his career. I don't know. It.
And what I kind of look at too is looking at this. We saw it with Cole Hamels himself after the 2008 season. With the extended postseason and everything, we saw when Hamels came back in 2009, he wasn't quite himself. He was still kind of tired. He wasn't as effective as he had been, and it took him a while to kind of get back up to speed. With the extended postseason run that the Phillies had, I can see a lot of their pitchers coming into the year still tired from not
Mhm.
having a full season. So for this year, maybe you extend it to a 6-man rotation, take some of the wear and tear off of your arms so that come October, when we're hopefully making another run, you've got more gas in the tank still.
Yeah, you got it. Okay, yeah. It's funny. Sorry, I looked this up. The 2015 Phillies rotation. You ready for this one? Was in some form or fashion basically a 6-man rotation throughout based on um, moves that were made. But it was Aaron Harang, Cole Hamels, Jerome Williams, Adam Morgan, Aaron Nola, David Buchanan. The Hamels bit, let's see, he was traded in that 15 season. So that may have been the cross up point where Hamels was traded out, Nola brought up. I'm thinking that's what happened. So I don't know. It's interesting to think about the they've got 4 spots that are completely locked. They said they're going 6-man rotation. So I would imagine that one of the rookies is going to get it, whether it be McAble, Painter, McGarry, and I think they still have a couple of veterans kind of floating around too that they could slot back there. But I don't know. It is interesting to think about. I just don't know. Again, hard for me to. My '08 Hamels is what I want. I don't know what he's looking like in 23.
Right, right, right.
So
Hey man, Nolan Ryan.
that's true. That's true. And heck, look,
Hey,
Verlander just got $86 million and he's like 40, what, 2?
Jamie Moyer.
Oh yeah, dude, no one's Jamie Moore though. That guy can still pitch now. I'd sign him to be in the back of the rotation right now. Seriously.
Dude, I saw a story. Speaking of Nolan Ryan, I saw a story the other day kind of made me laugh, and and I don't remember the player, but somebody went up to the plate. Some batter went up to the plate with a table leg instead of a baseball bat, and the umpire's like, "What are you doing? You can't do that." And he's like, "What's it matter? That's Nolan Ryan. I'm not going to hit off him anyway."
Yeah, yeah. I think they talk about that. I think in the Netflix thing. Have you seen that?
No.
Yeah, no, check it out. I'll recommend it here for if you have it. Chasing Nolan's excellent. Or Facing Nola. That's what Facing Nolan. I'll get it right eventually. Nolan. No, it's excellent. Good documentary. Kind of curtails his career. Um, coming up with the Mets as a kid, basically, and then going through his time with the Angels and the Astros and the Mets, or excuse me, and the Rangers. And but yeah, some of the numbers he ran up were ridiculous. And they talk about the speed of his pitches, and they said it was always rumored that he could hit 108 miles an hour. It's probably pretty accurate.
Did they talk about the time he beat the shit out of Robin Ventura?
Oh yeah, yep. And that was toward the end of his pitching career.
Yeah, I mean, he was old as fuck when he did that.
Yep. No
Well,
mess with that guy.
He was old as fuck. He was like younger than us.
Yeah. No. But yeah, they just let me look back on it real quick. There was a thing in here, and it had to do with debate. It was debatable on the 108 mile an hour fastball. So I'm going to read this real quick, just so you kind of know. And this doesn't come from the documentary, but I thought this was kind of neat. So it says on August 20th, and again, get all this in because this doesn't happen. It says on August 20th, 1974, in a game against the Detroit Tigers, then Angels pitcher Nolan Ryan pitched an 11-inning complete game in a 1-0 loss. So think about that. 11-inning complete game, but it was a loss. So as a quick note, Nolan's career is marked by playing teams that weren't all that good offensively. He's truly a case study in why wins aren't the best judge of pitch's worth in every instance. Not wanting to stray off for our topic, though, in the game against Detroit, Ryan was clocked in at 100.9 miles an hour in the 9th inning. That means he was getting stronger as the game wore on. But here's the thing. But like Bob Feller and Walter Johnson before him, Nolan Ryan's measurement needs to be adjusted too. Ryan's pitch was measured at 10 feet in front of home plate. When the proper adjustments are made, his 100.9 mile an hour fastball comes closer to 108.5 miles an hour. So, yeah, there you go. And he threw that in the 9th inning of an 11-inning game that he pitched.
Dude, that's you think about that shit. How incredible was that dude? Just that's beyond explain to me the adjustment. Why is the adjustment necessary?
So, okay. I'll read you this. So it's has to do with radar guns. So, okay. So discussing which pitcher is the hardest throw in modern game has long been settled by the radar gun. All MLB radar guns are set to record pitch speed at the 50-foot mark between the mound and home plate. Until Nolan Ryan ushered in the radar age in 1974, there were only 2 other pitchers that were clocked using various devices, and that was Walter Johnson and Bob Feller. And it says that Johnson's pitch speed was calculated on a gun range because at that point, where else would you test it? It says the Remington Arms Company used a device that was normally used to measure the speed of a bullet. In summation, the calculation they arrived at, 83.2 miles an hour, was flawed. Based on the design of the apparatus used, 83.2 miles an hour as a calculation of how fast his pitch was traveling at 7.5 feet behind home plate. So adjusting pitch speed to modern standards, his pitch was more closer to 93.8 miles an hour. So you have an old pitcher, an old error. They didn't have the tech at the time. That's how they measured it. It was on a gun range.
Gotcha.
So Feller said, Bob Feller threw a pitch basically through the same, device as Johnson. However, it said the speed was measured right at home plate. Feller clocked in at 98.6 miles an hour. Adjusting Feller's pitch to align with today's standard, that was closer to 107.6 miles an hour. So it was all device. It's basically like the devices used and like, you know, looking. I'm assuming they were looking at like old film and really trying to figure it out. But the thing with uh, the Nolan Ryan thing, it says in 1974 was a watershed year of sorts for how far we've come to measure the speed of a pitch. So coincidentally, this was the same year as the Nolan Ryan 108-mile-an-hour pitch. This was the year that the concept of the radar gun was established. A bunch of smart people decided that if you use an infrared beam, you can quickly get an accurate reading of how fast the pitch is moving. It can also be set to read the same point of measurement repeatedly, giving a fair assessment of the speed. Nolan Ryan became baseball's first pitcher to light up the radar at a major league park. So the rationale has to do with the fact of where Nolan's pitch was measured at. Apparently, because this was like the first year they were really doing it, they were all measuring him at different to where it's at now. So if you break that down into terms of how they measure it today or by today's standards, where they measure it at compared to where they measured his at, like they measured his pitch closer in, and I guess they measure closer into the batter now. I'm assuming. I'm not sure. It's either the other, which way or the other, but that's why the measurement point was different then than it is now. For like, you talk about a Aroldis Chapman and all these guys that throw routinely over 100 miles an hour. Whenever they take today's standards and they say, okay, we're measuring it at this spot, they measured his differently. And if you measure somebody by today's standards where they measured his, it would be slower.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why they go back and say, again, though, it's up for debate because you could do the mathematics behind it. Says it would have hit 108.5 miles an hour. There's no actual reading that says it was 108.5 miles an hour.
Gotcha.
So I think there's having some of that stuff there, though, is a little more credence than just saying, well, he threw 108. It's not just the old wives' tale.
Right.
There's something there. There's something tangible, but there's no reading that shows that.
Right.
So, I don't know. Anyhow, well, you got anything else, man, before we close up shop here?
That's all I got. Oh, I did. I played finally. You were kind enough to send me the updated roster, Tecmo Super Bowl for 2022 for Christmas, and I finally was able to get my NES hooked up, and it's dude, it's legit. It's really good. The only thing I'll say is, and obviously the rosters were done and everything was flashed before the season started, but Jalen Hurts is not nearly accurate enough in that game. I was playing it and I was doing really well except for kickoffs. I was having trouble and I was thinking maybe it was just the timing, but it's either that or the fact that I'm using some wireless controllers and I'm going through. So there's a little bit of latency there, and then I'm going through from the Nintendo to a switch box to an HDMI converter and then to the TV.
Oh yeah, so you got a lot of play there.
Yeah, so that's probably.
Well, it's funny you say that. We can have kind of finish this up on this because I did the hack cheat thing on the SNES, the Super Nintendo Classic, and I downloaded the current rosters ROM for the Super Nintendo version, which is similar. I love the Nintendo version much more, but
Yeah.
I wanted to console it, so this was as close as I could get. So someone out there on the internet's kind enough to keep updating rosters for that version of it, which is insane, but kudos to them for doing it. But I put it on there, and like everything in plays fine except for kickoffs. Like you have to time it just right, or it will onside it every single time. Yep, and I don't know. I don't know if that's the thing with some of these newer ROMs the way they are, but I knew that very very early on. I was like, man, that got like 5 onsides in a row. What's going on here?
Well, I will say that with the, we're a little divergent a little bit from our sports topics here, but
It's still sports.
Yeah, on the NES Classic and on the SNES Classic, and much more so with the NES Classic, there's a lot of latency. So when I was playing games like Mega Man and Super Mario Brothers, where it requires a precision button press to jump or to shoot or to do whatever, it was the timing was off every time.
Mm.
And I know that it's not just me being old and crusty, because I've played it on other systems and like recently, and I haven't had the issue. But every time I played it on the NES Classic and the SNES Classic, there's something with the emulation where there's some kind of latency, where there's a delay. So
Yeah, it could be our kickoff problem then.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
now it doesn't excuse me. I mean, it's the hardware that I'm using to play, because I'm going, like I said, I'm using a wireless controller, which the NES was not designed to be used with wireless, but I'm using wireless. And then it's going through an HDMI converter and a switch box and this and that. So the signal's taking a minute, but still, it's super fun, and it's just awesome. So thank you again.
Oh yeah, no problem, man. Anytime. Well, I'd say we close up by some good words.
Yeah.
And we're not going to sing it like Jalen Hurts, but we'll just say, "Flag was fly."
Go Birds.